Okay, so now when it comes to asking and framing question, like this is being done in the context of your assignment or in design thinking, but basically there's this one universal language that happens when you want to get started in trying to look for the right solutions. That universal language is questioning. Simple. Being able to apply critical thinking will result in you framing the right questions. Framing the right questions, you just can't, it's hard to get an accurate question just immediately. Now remember the video lecture that I posted, remember the onion layers. So you're gonna keep you should have follow-up questions, and you should keep peeling those layers until you find the right ones. So it would take a bit of effort, and it's important for you to remember that. Now, asking a framing question is really about giving you a sense of purpose to critical thinking. That means you being more investigative, okay, and basically you're acquiring specific skills. Now, what are these skills?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
For the empathy part of the assignment, so I've decided to ask myself the Proust questions from the Proust questionnaire.
Yeah.
And they're a bit too personal, so they feel like I'm exposing myself too much. So can I answer just a few, like 10?
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
35 of them.
Yeah.
And I've finished part of my assignment. Can I also send that to you somehow?
Yeah. Do you want to share it here, or do you want to?
No, personally.
Okay, Ken, go ahead.
Okay,
Send it
I'll send
over.
you the link on Messenger if that's okay with you.
Yeah, Ken. But I can't
Okay.
look at it right now, yeah? I'll
No,
look at
not
it.
right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. If some of the questions there, for the rest of you, some of the questions in the Proust questionnaire, or whichever questions that you intentionally frame and you think that you don't want to touch on something that's a little bit too personal, that's all good. Just stay focused on the intention. Focus on the intentions, focus on the purpose, and I think you'll be fine. The Proust questionnaire is really about character, just finding out your character, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to answer all of those questions. That's just the Proust questionnaire it's not something that you must use. You don't have to use that. It is just for those who has difficulty learning how to frame specific questions. The trick to the Proust questionnaire is one question could lead to more questions. So that comes to the part of inquiry skills, the ability to frame questions and gather information. So how do you continuously peel that layers and to find out a lot more about information? And sometimes we'll go straight into the assignment bit in context, okay, shortly. Then the other skills that you'll enable to get is understanding and evaluation skills, the ability to assess information, evaluate information. So to understand and evaluate arguments, you don't jump to any conclusions. Now, one thing I've learned in research is do not assume anything. No. The third kind of skills that you can get from critical thinking is advocacy skills. That means the ability to formulate positions and support them in a manner that promotes reasoned discussion. What do you support? Why do you think this is more important than the others? Your ability to weigh, value, distinguish which is more valuable and which is less valuable. Able to create sense of hierarchy, looking at priority, which comes first, which comes second, things like that. So advocacy skills is important because there may be things that you might support. There might arguments that might support if the argument is backed up with information, etc. Okay. So these three things: inquiry skills, understanding, evaluation skills, and then you have advocacy skills. Okay. So now, what are the results of it? What are the results of being able to frame questions and being able to investigate and, to apply these skills? Good reasoning, yeah, good reasoning and sound reasoning. You're not one of those people who just take the information at face value. No, I don't think so, right? So, or even if you want to be convincing or you want to be persuasive, there has to be strong, sound reasoning. Number two, intellectual standards. Now, whether you like it or not, it's a cerebral process. It's a thinking process. And whoa, what was that? So it's a thinking process. And this means that you're able to evaluate the quality of your arguments or reasons. Number three, intellectual traits or virtues, the values. Okay. So the values means how do you feel about certain things? What areas or what information do you think has strong support to your arguments and things like that, and why? So intellectual traits and virtues is more like why, or making a stand on a specific area or subject, things like that. Sorry about that. Let me just put that okay, in silent mode. Okay, so these three areas are the results of the application of critical thinking skills. So the skills, just backtrack a little bit. The skills are like advocacy skills, in evaluation skills, and inquiry skills. Yeah. So inquiry skills, evaluation skills, advocacy skills. These are the three main skills. Then the results of it is good reasoning, intellectual standards, quality. We're talking about quality. And then intellectual traits and virtues means value. Okay, the value of it. A bit more highlight there. Now, how do you elaborate further? There are other things that how do you elaborate into your data, how do you elaborate and clarify? How do you make specific judgments? What kind of decisions you make? So when it comes to trying to deep dive into a specific area, some of these things are some of these things that you would discover. And one of these, like some of these words, these keywords describes that process of discovery. One, clarity. Okay. So one of the reasons why you need to do this thing is to clarify. Like in the second stage, like define, you need to clarify your data. You need to narrow down your data, identify needs, and some of the sample questions. If you notice the type of questions you see beside these keywords, these are questions that is connected to those keywords. Yeah. For example, when you want to get clarity, you ask questions like, could you elaborate further? Okay. Could you give me an example? So these are open-ended questions because these questions elicit more information from the user. Like in this case, you or someone who would probably, someone that you are talking to concerning the idea you got. So could you elaborate further, or could you give me an example? Could you illustrate what you mean? So yeah, accuracy, could we check on that? Do you want to do cross-checking or whatever? Could we find out if that is true? Can you substantiate that with real information? Are there references to support this? Are there real facts, to support this? How could we verify or test that? That sort of thing. Then the other one is precision. Now, precision is kind of similar to accuracy, but this one, like trying to give clarity to vague and ambiguous questions. Sometimes questions can be very ambiguous. So you could just ask this question like, can you be more specific? Yeah. Could you give me more details? Right? Could you be more exact? Then you have relevance. Okay. How is that connected to this and that? Relevance. Yeah. How does that relate to the problem? So like you said, like some of you asking questions like, some of you have asked questions like, about the outcome. Okay, can I make it more fantasy kind of thing or whatever? But usually my answer is, well, it needs to reconnect back to the problem statement. Is reconnect back to the idea of what it's needed. Yeah. So how does that bear on the question? All right. How does that help us with the issue? See? And sometimes when you ask questions like this, right, how does that help us with the issue? Then you give an answer. Then the next question will probably, there'll be a follow-up probing question. You can continue to probe, like, why? Could you give us more example? Get it? So you can apply some of these ideas here. And these are good examples of how your questions can be framed, especially open-ended questions and questions that are meant to elicit data, information. All right. And depth means layers. Depth means 3D dimensions, three dimensions. For example, what factors make this a difficult problem? So it's more like higher order kind of thing. I mean, you got to think a lot more about this one. What are some of the complexities of these questions? That means it's asking you to describe, list, or maybe elaborate further, about the content or about the process, things like that. So depth is kind of like going a lot more, like you're doing surgery, you're conducting surgery on some of these questions or topic. Then breadth. Breadth is, how do you look this from another perspective? Breadth is this, lateral, kind of like lateral thinking. Breadth means looking at, what about other alternatives, for example, things like that. Do we need to consider another point of view? Looking at things from different perspective. So that's the reason why I mentioned sometimes, even if, the question, the brief, say, design a country based on yourself, is actually a trick question, because what was intended to happen was that you would discover that this is really not about you. It's really about your idea, but it's really about what the people might want from you. So you see where it's going. So some of you got it. Some of you caught that on. Some of you still questioning. How's that related to me? The country can't be all about you, can it? But it can be about the idea that you are advocating. Yeah, that you are persuading the people that the idea could be a better idea, a good idea, an idea that's beneficial for everyone. So think about that. Think about different perspectives. That's why it's okay to talk to others, to share ideas and get feedback, and you record those feedback. Logic. Does it all make sense? Kind of like when you're doing the ideation part, when you start to evaluate and assess, you start asking questions like, does this really make sense? Yeah. Does your first paragraph fit in the last? Things like that. And what do you say follow from the evidence? It's just like more like cross-referencing, logic, right? Logic, what ties in together, etc. Significance. Is this the most important problem to consider? Question it again, right? Sometimes what you thought was the most important may not be the most important, because as you deep dive, as you try to go more depth, try to go deeper into the issue, you realize, that may not be the only important thing. So what is significant? Yeah. So it's like you're trying to find the target in the sea of targets. So is this the central idea to focus on? All right. Which of these facts are most important? So it's, again, These things is best applied when you start to evaluate and assess the ideas. Fairness. Do I have a vested interest in this issue? So some things that, am I sympathetically representing the viewpoints of others? Am I being biased? Are others being biased about this? So fairness is almost like ethical considerations. Yeah, it's true. What I've also studied in research, and which you will study, is the sense of ethics, the question about ethics. Very, very important. You can't ignore some of these things because it can be the missing link. It can be the thing that's probably the main cause of it, So you never know. So those are some keywords, all right, that maybe you want to take into consideration and looking at the style of questioning there. Now, I think there's a mistake here. I'm just going to go to the next slide first. Right. That slide was supposed to be after this one. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, what about traits and virtues? What about value? Now, here, if you were to say that making judgments is not supposed to be your thing, you're wrong. You can make judgments, but you make judgment based on what is intellectually sound, all right, and what is objective, constructive. You don't make judgments that are, again, you got to check back don't make judgments out of emotions or being rash about it. No, but instead you start to make sound evaluations. For example, intellectual integrity. Now, intellectual traits or virtues in the process of questioning or framing questions, in the process of critical thinking, you need to have a sense of integrity. Integrity really means honesty. Yeah. So if you for example, I try to be the person I expect others to be. So you don't, for example, push down your values on other people, without trying to understand that value, without putting yourself in their position. So you want someone to treat you right, okay, to treat you fairly, you have to be fair. Yeah. What about intellectual humility? Never make an assumption. The last thing you need to do, being someone who is embarking on research, or someone who's studying intellectually, don't assume, don't make assumptions. Assumptions are like, the word assumptions mean you think that is true, you from your own biased opinion. Okay, never assume anything. Just because something looks really convincing, it doesn't necessarily be true, but you got to investigate that. So, and also do not assume that you know everything just because, I may have had these years of experience, but one of my famous quotes that I tell people, not famous, but very frequent quotes I say is, creativity never discriminates. Because I may have 40 years experience, 25 years experience, working experience, whatever. I may be a real top gun somewhere. But then here comes this young top gun, fresh from the academy or whatever, fresh from the institution, fresh from the university. And all we only thought, he's inexperienced, he's such a junior, whatever. But the next thing you know, he's got a brilliant idea, an idea just like that. And you work so many years to try to get there. He just comes up with one idea and boom, shot his career up. So very often that will result in people being jealous and being getting really irritated. But you see, that's what creativity is. It doesn't discriminate. Anyone can come up with great ideas. So you don't often know everything, although you think you know, right? Confidence in reasoning. It means that you're confident. The reason why you're confident, because you have strong facts to, strong facts to support your statements. Intellectual perseverance. Now, better to stick to the problem rather than to give up. Now, very often we are tempted to throw the towel in and like, I'm done. Okay. It's very tempting. I mean, even for me now, okay, it's very tempting because sometimes we all have the tendency to face some kind of brick wall at some point in our lives, and then you just throw the towel in and you're done. But no, just don't give up fighting. Even sometimes you got to accept the fact that sometimes you need to change. And times are changing a lot. Okay, I come from an older generation, and I know sometimes some things change, and I have to change with it. Yeah, so individuals of different generations face this problem a lot. Yeah. Fair-mindedness, again, consideration. Ethical consideration is one thing. Considering other people's feelings, other people's value judgments, always being aware that you're not dealing with one kind of homogeneous species. You're dealing with a variety of individuals, variety of people of different colors, backgrounds, creed, cultures, and many different kinds of perspective. So you need to consider how others see and how others view things. Intellectual courage. I should be ready to speak up for what I think is right. Don't be afraid to disagree. Don't be afraid to disagree. Very scary statement for any lecturer, for me. So, but I have to face the facts. Everyone has a right to disagree with something. Okay, so if you disagree with my statement now, you can tell me, Mr. Charles, I disagree. So put your arguments across. Then we'll evaluate this argument. We'll just see, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Sometimes someone who has experience may make mistakes. They think they know stuff, but they may have caught themselves making assumptions. But if you know something, you can correct that person politely, of course. Yeah. Intellectual empathy. Remember the empathy map? Trying to understand other people's thinking, trying to project yourself, empathically project yourself. It's called empathic projection. It's a technique. For example, okay, this is a phone, right? This is a phone, and imagine you are the phone, right? Now, I want to know how to improve this product, but it's hard for me to think two-dimensionally. I need to think more three-dimensionally. So what do? I'm going to pretend that I'm a phone, and I'm going to pretend that I've got all the traits of this phone, and I'm just going to try to be the phone. I know it sounds really disturbing, isn't it? So I would frame questions like, if they were to touch me, it sounds wrong, isn't it? If they were to touch my buttons, how would I want them to touch my buttons? This sort of thing. How would I want to look like? If I'm able to project images, let's say, what if I'm the phone and I'm able to speak stuff to you? Well, there you go. The phone has voices. And what if I'm able to make, and so on and so forth. So you frame all these different questions when you are the product, and somehow you would find out, there's something missing here or whatever. Einstein used to always empathically project himself as like electrons, riding on beams of electrons and things like that. Because sometimes you can't help it. You really need to see how others, how others see, how different perspectives. That's great. Whoever's noting this down, Awesome. Excellent. And intellectual autonomy. I must do my own thinking to decide who and what to believe. And I've often faced the scenario where sometimes some students will come to me, I really need you to tell me whether this is right or wrong. But very often they get really frustrated when I say, well, what do you think? Do you think you've done something right? Do you think this reflects the problem statement? Do you think this? And I throw back the question to them and they get like, it doesn't matter what I think. No, you can't say that. It matters what you think. And you need to be confident enough to be, you should have that confident in reasoning, and you need to be able to make decisions. You have to be decisive about things like that. So basically with all this information here, okay, it's important for you to remember this is all part of the value that you can gain when you really apply this. Yeah. Now, there are other words like claims, facts, opinions, the earlier slide thing. Yeah. So now let's come to, when you say assumptions, sometimes you make specific claims. Now, these are some of the things that you might want to be aware of. I'm not saying you can't make a claim, but you got to always substantiate your claims with facts, with information. That's the reason why the empathy map, empathy on the empathy side, empathy, the area of empathy is for you to get data, lots of data. And it's very important to get that to corroborate some of the inferences that you might get, or hypotheses, or some theories that you get that definitely need to be supported by some of the data that you get from empathy. Now these are some examples of claims. Now, what do you mean by claims or assumption? Okay. Now, if guys play with dolls, then they are gay. Right? If you want to react, go ahead and react. Open your. Is that true, guys?
Toxic masculinity.
Different type of dolls you can play with.
Oh, bloody hell.
Whoa.
I got that so much from other guys.
I heard that too.
They want to.
I heard that too. Somebody said different kind of dolls, but I'm not going there, okay?
Very questionable.
That's kind of sus.
Very questionable.
Move on. Everything about this claim is.
Well, I am happy.
This is the opposite. This is the opposite part of creativity.
My bad.
Okay, right. So
there's a hidden assumption here.
Yeah, well, obviously this claim is false. It's a false claim. It's definitely an assumption. You just because a guy plays with dolls doesn't necessarily mean they're gay. It means they like dolls. Simple as that, right? I know guys who love knitting. Doesn't mean that they are women-like. They're not. They're just being men. And there's so much about men that they don't realize. Men can do a lot more things which women can do too. I mean, women can do a lot of things guys can do. Am I making an assumption here? You decide. A lot of cause for debate here, isn't it? She wears glasses, therefore she's clever.
I wear glasses and I'm stupid.
No, I'm not saying. No.
Where's the lie?
This is not a general statement. I'm just saying an example of the assumption, right?
Very stereotypical.
It's true sometimes.
I wear glasses because I'm blind.
Yeah, I'm blind too.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Oh my God.
I am
I'm
born
stupid.
with bad eyesight, so I wear glasses.
Yeah, there you go. You're wearing glasses because of eyesight. It's not because you're clever. It doesn't mean anything. It's just your eye. So there you go. If I take this off, it's blurred. So there you go. Now, what about another sentence, another example? Cats hate humans. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I can show scars.
I love cats.
Well, some
That's a
animals have different
I
vibes
must
with
say,
different
cats are
humans.
very
So if you have scars from cats, no comment. Not going to say nothing. Money can solve all problems. Is that true?
Yeah, plastic surgery. Let's go.
75%.
So
Yes,
true.
yes, 100%,
Let's go.
100%.
Time.
Let's go.
Really?
5%.
Yeah.
No.
Emphasis on
Sir, have
all.
you heard the new Ariana Grande
My
song?
happiness lied.
Wow, look at all that response.
At the
Money
top
create problem
of
and Bank Negara
the
Malaysia
thing
find
that
you.
can't be solved by money. Then they need time.
Very true.
You need to spend time, and
If you have
time is
no-
money.
Yeah, of course. Money is never everything, right? So there's also another false assumption. Computers are useless. Is that
You
true?
need
Bro,
to have-
What are we
It's not.
doing here right now?
It's
How
not
are
just
we
Okay.
considering?
Oh, who's
No,
the
I mean we're
Luddite?
using computers right now.
No,
Who's the Luddite?
on one hand, someone said the supercomputer that's playing chess with the grandmaster, that's a valid competition. Is it? So some say no. The ability for a computer to process, process information can never match the brain, the human brain. So
Don't have emotions.
so some say some come to that conclusion. They support this statement with these kind of examples. But are they completely useless? They're not. They help us a lot. I would say computers are complementary, but then these are debatable, right? But again, false claim, right? So now I'm not colored, therefore I'm entitled.
Whoa.
White supremacy.
Yeah. Now, only example.
Maybe not that, sir. Maybe not that.
Totally
Damn.
false
White
claim.
privilege.
The Black Lives Matter thing. Yes. Yeah.
Very sensitive
Matter
issue.
period.
It's a very sensitive issue. So
Yeah.
that's why I put this example, because sensitive issues or certain specific statements like this are so debatable, and you can't assume that that's true, right? So again, that's the one example. We hear that a lot. I'm a lecturer, so I lecture all the time.
I mean, that's your job, right?
Yeah, isn't that true?
That's
You
a
get paid for this,
job.
sir.
You do that as a living.
Yes, sir.
The more you talk, the more money you get paid.
Okay. All right. So from claims, then I've been talking about facts and opinion. Now, what is the difference between a fact and an opinion? Now, claims, obviously, we got to be very careful. We need to substantiate claims. We got to support claims with facts. So what are facts? Now, one example is, look at this poster, right? Now, let's click another slide. Okay, there you go. Now, racism takes many shapes. Now, this is an anti-racism poster, right? Anti-racial discrimination poster. Now, there is a statement here: the dark-skinned people are discriminated the most. Is that true? Is that a fact?
Yes.
They
Yes.
were historical.
Is it-
Some content, yes, it is true.
To some extent, you mean?
Yes.
You have dark skin.
But you should read the statement very, very carefully. Dark-skinned people, that means only people who are darker skinned, all right, are discriminated the most. And it's a general statement. It's a general statement that describes all dark-skinned people all around the world. Does that
Maybe
necessarily
knowledge
mean
minority.
it cannot be a fact? It's only a fact in context. So,
Depends on the
Everyone gets discriminated.
what do you think is a problem with that statement? The statement wasn't specific.
It's the most part.
You
The
can
last
be
few
white
words.
Yeah.
Too general.
be tanned, right? And then
Yeah.
you're dark skinned that way. So is that wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, boys.
There you
There are
go.
also other people that are discriminated who are not dark skinned.
Exactly. So you see, you have, from all your responses just now, the problem with this statement is it wasn't specific. So there's also lacking facts. Okay. Now, the next statement, the hardest hit are colored people. Again, is that a fact? Are these all so
I
far?
mean, yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Whether it's
because,
like yellow or
yeah,
black,
mostly
So
brown.
from dark skin and colored people. So colored people are hardest hit, really? I mean,
I mean,
all,
colored
I-
people are just
I
different
disagree with
races.
this. It depends on who's the minority and who's the majority.
yeah, you see, again,
Depends on where the person is.
yes, you see, from your response, some of you agree, but you have some additional reasoning there that it needs to be more specific. Again, it's hard to consider that as a fact. Now, racism only occurs between white people and colored people. Is that a fact?
Oh no.
No, absolutely not.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly,
Again,
right? So
Malaysians,
you
Malays.
definitely
and
do
like-
not agree with this, because it can't be a fact, because now racism has a bigger dimension to it. You know, there's so many versions of it now. Okay, now were they facts and or opinions? Fortunately, they're just opinions. Now that's the
Yeah.
difference.
Hey.
Facts needs more specific. It needs to be supported by data. That's the important part. You need data, because otherwise you cannot corroborate your facts. You cannot corroborate your opinion. Sorry, you cannot substantiate your opinions. You need verification. You need validation of opinions, because you know one thing, if there are no validation, you know, there's no verification to these statements, trust me, our legal system will be gone, right? Because you know, they need to investigate matters like this. So good thing that those statements are just opinions, right? Now, what are facts on the other hand? Yeah, so facts requires extensive investigation. Now, these are objective statements, because objective statements can be verified. Yeah. And what are opinions? Opinions are subjective statements. So facts are objective statements. Opinions are subjective statements. Now, subjective statements are very often based on personal beliefs, biases, and that's where that keyword called fair-mindedness, intellectual integrity, that's where the values come into play, because you don't, you know, being critical is not just about you being able to ask questions, is you being able to discernment, being able to make value judgments. That's why you need to have intellectual integrity. Yeah. So the problem with this world is that people are always assuming things. People are stereotyping things. They're assuming things. They're not really thinking with their head. They're thinking with emotion. Yeah. So that's if only everyone can pull themselves together and just take a second look to it. Why not? You know, I mean, what kind of people are you? Are you one of those who join the bandwagon, you know, and just join the crowd? Or are you going to try to understand why? You know? So is it okay to question facts? But how do you evaluate facts? Simple, very, very simple. Now, evaluating facts, you frame specific questions to evaluate facts. So how do you frame specific questions? Now, you've already seen some examples earlier, but it's just here I'm reiterating, even if they are facts, it needs to have some kind of reference. If you make a claim that that's a fact, you must again substantiate that. So for example, who wrote the content? Who designed it? Now, very often in research, when you're writing an academic paper, or when you're writing a book, some kind of academic paper, or even if you're drawing or designing something, you're not reinventing the wheel. Not possible. No one can reinvent the wheel, because there are a lot of content in this world. There's a lot of content in the internet. So there has to be something that is based on. So you need to cite that person. You need to cite that design. You need to cite that information. You got to indicate the reference. Where did you get this information from? So that's the reason why sometimes I ask some students, when they show some incredible things in the e-portfolio, some amazing images, I ask them, where did you get this information from? Because there's no references. So it's important to put some references so I know where you got that information from. And if you and after you've put those references, you just write a comment about it, and that's good enough. I'm not asking you to write a paragraph or whatever. Just write a comment about it. Why did you put that there? These are some of the images that is connected or related to what. A caption like that will help so much, and there is a link, a reference link that will help so much. It wouldn't even take 5 minutes to do it. Yeah, as long as you've done some search, you put some information, organize it, you're done, right? So all this information will help you judge accuracies. It will actually help you judge whether these are biased content, and so on and so forth. So it's important. It's important that you become creative detective. Now, these are what you call reliability and validity, or validity or reliability. How reliable is that information? Yeah. Okay. I'll pause here, and that's the end of all the slides, actually. Now, if you want a copy of the slides, I'll place a copy of the slides in Times, and you can still watch the video in a Facebook group if you want to see the slides again.